The night my husband passed away, the funeral director called me and said, "Ma'am, could you come here now? We found something in his pocket we have to show you." Then he added, "Please don't tell your kids, you'll be in danger." When I arrived and saw what they'd found, I froze. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Now, let me tell you how. I got to that terrifying moment standing in a cold funeral home at midnight, realizing my entire world was about to shatter. 3 days earlier, I was still just Eleanor Henderson, a grieving widow and devoted mother. James had died suddenly of what the doctors called a massive heart attack. Natural causes, they said. Nothing suspicious. Just a 62-year-old man whose heart gave out while he was working late in his home office. I found him there myself when I came home from my book club meeting, slumped over his desk, still wearing his reading glasses, a cup of coffee gone cold beside him. The paramedics said he'd probably died instantly. No suffering, they assured me. As if that made losing my husband of 39 years any easier. The funeral arrangements were a blur. Casseroles from neighbors, endless decisions about flowers and music, and my 2 adult children hovering over me like I might break at any moment. David, my oldest at 38, took charge with the efficiency of the successful attorney he'd become. Sarah, 35, and a registered nurse, kept trying to press sedatives on me that I didn't want. "You need to rest," she'd say, holding out little white pills. "Grief is exhausting for someone your age." Someone my age, as if 64 was ancient, as if I hadn't been taking care of myself and everyone else for decades. "I'm fine." I told her the same words I'd been saying since James collapsed. Because what else do you say when your world that you feel like you're drowning, that the house feels too big, too quiet, and filled with memories that make it hard to breathe? David insisted on handling all the legal paperwork, sweeping in with his briefcase and important phone calls. "Don't worry about any of this, Mom. I'll take care of everything." He'd always been protective, maybe too protective, treating me like I was made of glass ever since his father died. The wake was standing room only. James had been loved in our small Ohio town, respected for his work as an accountant and for his volunteer efforts at the church. People shared stories about his kindness, his integrity, his devotion to family. "Salt of the earth," they called him, a good man who worked hard and loved well. I stood there accepting condolences, wearing my black dress in appropriate grief, nodding at all the right moments. But inside, I was numb. 49 years since our first date, 39 years of marriage, and suddenly, I was supposed to figure out who Eleanor Henderson was without James. The funeral service was beautiful. David gave a eulogy that had half the church crying, talking about what a wonderful father and husband James had been. Sarah sang his favorite hymn, her voice breaking on the high notes. I sat in the front pew, surrounded by flowers and sympathy, feeling like I was watching someone else's life. After the burial, after the last casserole was delivered and the final sympathy card was read, the house finally fell quiet. David and Sarah both offered to stay, but I sent them home to their own families. I needed space to think, to process, to figure out what came next. That's when the phone rang. 11:47 p.m. According to the clock by my bed. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Robert Morrison from Morrison Funeral Home. I'm sorry to call so late, but something's come up that I think you need to see immediately." I'd been half asleep, drifting in that strange space between waking and dreaming, where I kept forgetting James was gone. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "Is there a problem with the burial?" "Not exactly, ma'am. When we were preparing the final paperwork, we found something in your husband's suit jacket pocket that we missed during the initial preparation." Something that he paused, and I could hear him breathing. "Ma'am, I think you should come down here right away. And please don't mention this to anyone else yet, not even your children." The way he said it made my blood run cold. "Mr. Morrison, you're scaring me. I don't mean to frighten you, but this is delicate, very delicate. Can you come now?" I looked around my empty bedroom at James's side of the bed still unmade, at his reading glasses still sitting on the nightstand. "I'll be right there." The drive to the funeral home felt like something out of a nightmare. The streets of Cedar Falls were empty, streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. I kept thinking about Mr. Morrison's voice, the careful way he'd chosen his words. "Don't tell your children. You could be in danger." What could James possibly have had in his pocket that would put me in danger? The funeral home looked different at night, darker, more imposing, with only a few lights on in the back office. Mr. Morrison met me at the side entrance. his usual professional composure replaced by something that looked like genuine worry. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Henderson. I know this is unusual, but given what we found," he led me through a hallway I'd never seen before, past empty viewing rooms and into his private office. On his desk was a small evidence bag containing what looked like a folded piece of paper and a tiny electronic device I didn't recognize. "We found these in the inside pocket of your husband's suit jacket. The pocket was sewn shut from the inside, which is why we missed it initially. Your husband had clearly hidden these items deliberately." I stared at the bag, my heart pounding. "What are they?" Mr. Morrison pulled on latex gloves and carefully removed the items. The paper was actually several papers folded tightly together. The electronic device was small and rectangular, with a tiny screen. "The device is a digital recorder, Mrs. Henderson, high-end, professional grade, the kind investigators used." He handed me the papers. "And these, well, I think you'd better read them yourself." With trembling fingers, I unfolded the first sheet. It was in James's handwriting, his careful accountant script that I'd seen on Christmas cards and grocery lists for decades. But these words made no sense. David, suspicious financial activity, unexplained income, lifestyle beyond means, investigated source. I looked up at Mr. Morrison, confused. "I don't understand." "David makes good money as an attorney. Keep reading," he said gently. The second page was more detailed. James had documented dates, amounts, and suspicious behaviors. March 15th, David purchased a new BMW, paid cash, claimed bonus from firm, checked with firm, no bonuses given this quarter. April 2nd, Sarah bought house in Maple Heights, $400,000 purchase price, minimal mortgage, nurse, salary, insufficient for down payment. April 20th, both children asking detailed questions about my health, life insurance policies, and will provisions. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. James was investigating our children. "There's more," Mr. Morrison said, his voice carefully neutral. "The recordings on the device, they're conversations between your children about you and your husband." The room felt like it was tilting. "What kind of conversations?" Instead of answering, he pressed a button on the recording device. David's voice filled the small office, clear and unmistakable. "The old man's getting suspicious. He's been asking too many questions about the money." Sarah's voice responded, "We need to be more careful. Maybe it's time to move to phase 2. "What's phase 2? David asked. "The plan we discussed. Make it look natural. Heart attack, stroke, something believable for their age." My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair behind me. My children, my babies, talking about killing their father and me, like we were obstacles in their way. Mr. Morrison stopped the recording. "Mrs. Henderson, I think your husband discovered something about your children that terrified him. These recordings suggest they were planning to harm you both. But James died of a heart attack, natural causes." He paused. "Did he?" The question hung in the air between us. Double quotes, "Mrs. Henderson, your husband was a careful, methodical man. If he hid this evidence, if he was recording your children's conversations, he suspected something terrible." I thought about James's last few weeks, how distracted he'd been, working late in his office with the door closed, how he'd been asking strange questions about my daily routines, who I talked to, where I went. I thought he was just being overprotective after his recent cardiac workup. "There's something else," Mr. Morrison said, pulling out another sheet of paper. "Your husband wrote this letter. It's addressed to you." With shaking hands, I opened the letter. James's familiar handwriting blurred through my tears. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me, and my worst fears have been confirmed. Our children are not who we thought they were. I've been investigating them for months, and what I've discovered breaks my heart. They're involved in something dangerous, something that puts us both at risk. The recordings will tell you everything. Trust no one in our family except yourself. Contact Detective Ray Martinez at the State Police. He knows about my investigation. I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better, James." Detective Martinez. James had been working with the police. "Mrs. Henderson," Mr. Morrison said carefully, "I think your husband's death might not have been as natural as everyone believes." I stared at him, the implications slowly sinking in. "You think they killed him?" "I think your husband believed they were planning to kill him, and now that he's gone," he didn't finish the sentence. "But he didn't need to. If my children had killed their father, I was next." My phone buzzed with a text message from David. "Mom, I'm coming over in the morning. We need to discuss some financial matters regarding Dad's estate." For the first time since James died, I felt something other than grief. I felt afraid. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with James's evidence spread across the table, listening to recording after recording of my children casually discussing murder. By dawn, I'd heard enough to know that my husband had died trying to protect me, and now I was alone with two people who saw me as their next victim. The recordings painted a picture so horrific that I kept hoping I'd wake up from a nightmare. David and Sarah had been systematically planning their parents' deaths for over a year. They'd researched methods, studied our routines, and calculated exactly how much money they'd inherit. The life insurance alone is $500,000. Sarah's voice said on one recording, plus the house, Dad's retirement accounts, Mom's inheritance from Grandma Ruth. We're looking at close to $2 million total. The sooner the better, David replied. Property values are going up. If we wait too long, the tax implications get complicated. They were talking about murdering their parents like it was a business transaction. The most chilling recording was from just 2 weeks ago, Sarah explaining how she could easily make a heart attack look natural. A small injection of potassium chloride mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. No one would question it at their age, especially with Dad's history of high blood pressure. I'd been making coffee when I heard that one, and I dropped the mug, sending ceramic shards across the kitchen floor. That's how they'd killed James. My daughter, the registered nurse who'd sworn an oath to do no harm, had murdered her own father with a hospital injection. At 7:30 a.m., I called the number James had written down for Detective Martinez, State Police. Martinez speaking. Detective, this is Elalana Henderson. I think you knew my husband, James. There was a pause. Mrs. Henderson, I was wondering when you'd call. I'm sorry for your loss. You know about the investigation. I know your husband was very worried about his children's activities. We've been working together for about 3 months. I'm sorry we couldn't prevent what happened to him. So you believe they killed him? Another pause. Mrs. Henderson, can we meet somewhere private? What I have to tell you isn't safe to discuss over the phone. We arranged to meet at a small diner outside town. I told him I'd be wearing a blue scarf so he could recognize me. As I was getting ready to leave, my phone rang. Mom, David's voice was bright and cheerful. I'm running a little early. I'm actually pulling into your driveway now. My heart stopped. I looked out the front window and saw his black BMW in my driveway. One James had noted was paid for in cash. Oh, that's fine, honey, I said. I'll put on some coffee. Actually, Mom, Sarah's with me. We thought it would be good for us all to talk together about Dad's affairs. Both of them, here now. I glanced at the kitchen table, where all of James's evidence was still scattered. If they saw it, just give me a minute to tidy up, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. You know how I am about keeping things neat. Of course, David said. We'll wait in the car for a few minutes. Take your time. I hung up and frantically gathered all the papers and recordings, stuffing them into a shopping bag. Where could I hide them? Somewhere my children wouldn't think to look. The basement. James's old workshop in the basement. Behind his tool cabinet. I raced downstairs and shoved the bag into a narrow space between the wall and the cabinet, pushing it as far back as I could. When I came back upstairs, David and Sarah were standing in my kitchen. David had used his key to let himself in. Mom, you look tired, Sarah said, studying my face with those sharp nurse's eyes. Are you sleeping? Are you taking the medication I gave you? The medication. I thought about the little white pills she'd been pushing on me since the funeral. Yes, I've been taking them. It was a lie. I'd been flushing them down the toilet, thinking they were just making me feel foggy and strange. Now I wondered what they really were. Good. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Proper rest is important at your age, especially during grief. David was scanning the kitchen with the same sharp attention Sarah had been giving my face. Mom, we need to talk about some practical matters. Dad's bank accounts, the house, your financial situation going forward. Can't that wait? I asked. It's only been 4 days since the funeral. Actually, that's exactly why we can't wait, David said, pulling out a thick folder. There are time-sensitive issues, tax implications, estate probate requirements. The sooner we get everything organized, the better protected you'll be. Protected. The word made my skin crawl. Sarah moved toward the coffee pot. Let me make coffee for everyone. Mom, you should sit down, she added. You're looking pale. As she busied herself with mugs and cream, I noticed her pull something small from her purse, a tiny vial, almost hidden in her palm. My blood turned to ice. She was putting something in my coffee. Actually, I said, standing up abruptly, I just realized I have an appointment this morning with the insurance company about James's policy. Both of them turned to stare at me. What insurance company? David asked, his voice suddenly sharp. The life insurance. They need some paperwork signed. I was making it up as I went along, hoping I sounded convincing. Mom, I told you I'd handle all of that, David said. You don't need to worry about insurance paperwork. That's what I'm here for. I know, sweetie, but they specifically requested that I come in person. Something about signature verification. Sarah was still holding the coffee cup she'd been preparing for me. Can't you reschedule? She asked. We've driven all the way over here. I really can't. They said it was urgent. I grabbed my purse and jacket. Rain check on the coffee. I was halfway to the front door when David caught my arm. Mom, his grip was firm, just shy of painful. We really need to have this conversation today about your future security. The way he said security made me think of James's recordings. Looked into my son's eyes and saw something I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. In that moment, I understood why James had been so afraid. Of course we do, I said, trying to pull away gently. But after I handled this insurance matter, I'll call you both later. David's grip tightened slightly. Mom, I think you're more confused than you're admitting. There is no insurance appointment. We checked. There's nothing scheduled. They'd been checking on me, monitoring me. Well then, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I guess I'll have to make one. I pulled free and walked out the front door, feeling their eyes on my back like a physical weight. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror standing in my driveway, watching me go. They knew I knew something. And now I was running out of time. Detective Martinez was exactly what I'd expected from James's description. Gray hair, with the calm competence that comes from years of dealing with the worst humanity has to offer. He was already sitting in a corner booth when I arrived at the diner, nursing a cup of coffee and reading a newspaper. Mrs. Henderson, he said, standing as I approached, and extending his hand. Ray Martinez, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I slid into the booth across from him, my hands still shaking from the encounter with my children. Detective, I need to know everything. My husband is dead, and I think my children killed him. Think you're right. His directness was both shocking and oddly comforting. Your husband came to me 3 months ago with concerns about David and Sarah's financial activities. We'd been building a case. What kind of case? Martinez pulled out a thin folder. David's been involved in money laundering for a drug operation. Sarah's been stealing and selling prescription medications from the hospital. Together, they've been moving large amounts of cash through fake real estate transactions. The room felt like it was spinning. Drugs, I whispered. My children are involved with drugs. Your son's law firm represents some very dangerous people, Martinez said. Mrs. Henderson, when David started skimming money from client accounts to fund his own lifestyle, he attracted the wrong kind of attention. But they're successful, I said weakly. David has a thriving practice. Sarah has a good job. David's practice is mostly legal aid cases and small-time criminal defense. He makes maybe $80,000 a year. Sarah makes about $65,000 as a nurse. Neither of them could afford their current lifestyles on legitimate income. I thought about the BMW, Sarah's expensive house, the designer clothes I'd noticed at the funeral. How much money are we talking about? David owes his criminal clients close to $200,000, Martinez said. Sarah's drug theft operation was bringing in about $50,000 a year, but most of that was going toward paying interest on David's debt. Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, your children weren't just planning to kill you for inheritance money. They were planning to kill you to stay alive. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Their clients would kill them if they couldn't pay. These weren't the kind of people who accepted payment plans. Your husband's life insurance and your combined assets would have been enough to clear David's debt and give them both a fresh start. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text David had sent earlier. They're escalating, I said. They tried to drug me this morning. Martinez read the message, his expression darkening. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're in immediate danger. These people have already killed once, and they're not going to stop now. What do I do first? You can't go home. Not alone. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay? I thought about my options. Most of my close friends were James's age or older. I couldn't put them at risk. My sister lives in Columbus. Call her, Martinez said. Tell her you're coming for a visit. Don't mention why. Don't give details. What about the evidence? James left recordings, documents. It's all hidden in my basement. We'll get it, but not today. Right now, the priority is keeping you alive long enough to testify against them. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Sarah. Mom, you left your medication on the counter. We're worried about you missing doses. Where are you? Martinez read the message and cursed under his breath. They're tracking your medication schedule. Mrs. Henderson, what exactly did Sarah give you? Little white pills. She said they were for anxiety and sleep. Did you take them? I flushed them down the toilet. They made me feel strange. Smart woman, Martinez said, standing up. We're leaving now. I'm driving you to Columbus myself. As we walked toward his unmarked police car, my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Martinez said. Act normal. Don't let them know you're with police. Hi, David. Mom, where are you? We came back to check on you, and your car is gone. I decided to drive around for a while, I said. Clear my head. That's not like you. You hate driving alone. He was right. I'd always been nervous driving by myself, especially on highways. I'm just trying to process everything that's happened. Come home, Mom. Sarah made lunch. We'll wait for you. I looked at Martinez. He was shaking his head vigorously. Actually, I said, I think I'm going to visit Ruth for a few days. There was a long pause. Ruth, in Columbus. Mom, that's a 2-hour drive. You shouldn't be driving that far alone. I'll be fine. Wait for us. We'll drive you. The desperation in his voice was terrifying. No, I said. I need some time by myself, Mom. David's voice hardened. I really think you should come home. Sarah's concerned about your mental state. The grief might be affecting your judgment. My mental state? Sarah's medical expertise. They were already laying the groundwork to have me declared incompetent. I have to go. David, I'll call you when I get to Ruth's. Mom, don't hang up. We need to talk about. I ended the call and immediately turned off my phone. Good, Martinez said as we got into the car. But they're going to escalate now. Desperate people make desperate choices. As we pulled out of the diner parking lot, I saw a black BMW turning in behind us. They followed me. I whispered. Martinez checked his rearview mirror and accelerated. Hold on, Mrs. Henderson. We're about to find out exactly how far your children are willing to go. The BMW was gaining on us, and I realized this quiet Sunday morning was about to become a lot more dangerous. That the chase lasted 20 minutes and felt like a lifetime. Martinez drove with the practiced skill of someone who'd done this before, taking back roads and side streets I didn't even know existed. The BMW stayed with us for most of the drive, David behind the wheel, driving with a recklessness that terrified me. This was my son, the careful attorney, who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, now driving like a maniac to catch his own mother. When we finally lost them on a winding country road, Martinez pulled over and radioed for backup. This is Detective Martinez, badge 4471. I have a witness in protective custody. Need immediate assistance with surveillance and arrest warrants. Witness in protective custody. That's what I was now, Mrs. Henderson, Martinez said after ending the call. I need to tell you something your husband discovered right before he died. Something that changes everything. I was staring out the back window, still searching for the BMW. What now? Your children weren't just planning to kill you for the inheritance money. They already had a buyer lined up for your house. A buyer, I said. But the house isn't even in probate yet. David had power of attorney documents drawn up, forged your signature, and put the house on the market 3 days before your husband died. Martinez pulled out another file. James found the real estate listing online. That's when he knew they were planning to move immediately after your death. The house where I'd raised my children, James and I had built our life together, was already being sold. While I was grieving at his funeral, they were planning to cash in on my murder. Detective, I said, how could they forge my signature on legal documents? David's an attorney. He knows that's illegal. Your son stopped caring about legality a long time ago. Mrs. Henderson, when you're stealing from drug dealers, forgery is the least of your concerns. My phone buzzed again. Against Martinez's advice, I turned it back on. I needed to know what my children were doing. A text from Sarah. Mom, we're really worried. David thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. We've contacted Dr. Williams about having you evaluated. Dr. Williams, my primary care physician. The same doctor who treated James's blood pressure. Sarah knew him professionally from the hospital. They're going to have me declared mentally incompetent, I said, showing Martinez the text. Not if we arrest them first. He started the car again. But Mrs. Henderson, I need those recordings your husband made. That's the evidence we need to prove premeditation. They're in my basement, I said, hidden behind James's tool cabinet. We'll get them tonight. I'm calling in a team. As we drove toward Columbus, Martinez filled me in on more details of James's investigation. My husband had been far more thorough than I'd ever realized. He'd documented financial transactions, photographed suspicious meetings, and even followed David to several locations where money changed hands. Your husband was braver than he knew, Martinez said. The people your son owes money to don't hesitate to kill witnesses. Is that why they killed James? I asked. To stop his investigation. Partly, Martinez said, but also because they needed the life insurance money immediately. David's creditors were getting impatient. The thought of James dying alone in his office, betrayed by the children he'd loved and provided for, made me sick. Detective, I said quietly, I want them to pay for what they did. All of it. They will, he said. But first, we need to keep you alive long enough to testify. When we reached my sister Ruth's house in Columbus, Martinez insisted on checking the entire property before letting me go inside. Ruth, bless her, took one look at my face and asked no questions. She simply pulled me into a hug and promised I could stay as long as I needed. That evening, as I sat in Ruth's guest room trying to process everything that had happened, Martinez called with an update. We got the evidence, he said. James hid more than just recordings. He had financial documents, photographs, even copies of David's forged signatures. Mrs. Henderson, your husband, built an airtight case against your children. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait for them to make a mistake, which, based on their behavior today, shouldn't take long. He was right. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah's number. Mom, thank God. Where are you? We've been searching everywhere. I'm safe, Sarah. Mom, you're scaring us. This isn't like you're running off without explanation. David thinks you might be having some kind of psychological episode related to grief. Psychological episode. Medical terminology to support an incompetence claim. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months, I said. Mom, Sarah continued, we found something disturbing in Dad's office. Some kind of investigation he was conducting about David's business, about my work at the hospital. We think his fear over his heart condition might have made him paranoid. They'd found evidence James had left behind. Now they were going to claim he was mentally unstable when he made the recordings. Sarah, I said, I know what you and David have been doing. There was a long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. Mom, I think you need professional help. David's already spoken to Judge Morrison about emergency custody proceedings. Emergency custody, I said. For a 64-year-old woman, you can't do that. Actually, Sarah said quietly, we can, especially when we present evidence of your recent erratic behavior and the concerning materials we found among Dad's belongings. Sarah, I said quietly, your father wasn't paranoid. He was protecting me. From what, Mom? I took a deep breath. From you. Another long silence followed. Then Sarah said something that made my blood freeze. Mahom, you should know that Dr. Williams found some concerning irregularities in Dad's blood work from his last visit. Things that suggest he might have been administered something that contributed to his heart attack. She was admitting it. My daughter, the nurse I'd raised with love and pride, was telling me she had murdered her father and Mom. Sarah's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Those irregularities, they're exactly the kind that would show up if someone was being slowly poisoned. Someone like you. The line went dead. I sat in Ruth's guest room, staring at my silent phone, finally understanding the true horror of my situation. That my children hadn't just planned to kill me quickly for inheritance money. They'd been slowly poisoning me for months, just like they'd done to James. And now that I'd run, now that I knew the truth, they were going to accelerate their timeline. Detective Martinez was right. Desperate people make desperate choices. And I was about to discover just how desperate my children could be. 3 hours after Sarah's chilling phone call, Detective Martinez arrived at Ruth's house with 2 other officers and a mobile crime lab unit. The quiet suburban street suddenly looked like a scene from a police procedural, complete with unmarked cars and serious-faced people carrying equipment I couldn't identify. Mrs. Henderson, Martinez said as he settled into Ruth's living room. We've been busy since this afternoon. What your daughter said about blood work, irregularities, we had James's body exhumed for an emergency autopsy. The room tilted slightly. You dug up my husband. The preliminary results confirm what we suspected. James was systematically poisoned over a period of several months. Small doses of a compound that mimics heart disease symptoms. He pulled out a thick folder of medical documents. Your children didn't just kill him that night. They'd been killing him slowly for half a year. Ruth grabbed my hand, her face pale. Eleanor, what kind of monsters did you raise? That was the question haunting me all day. How do children you love, nurture, and sacrifice for turn into people who can methodically murder their own parents? Detective, I said. Sarah mentioned irregularities that would show up if someone was being slowly poisoned. Someone like me. We're going to test you immediately. He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. If I'd been poisoned for months, there might be damage we couldn't undo. The blood draw took 5 minutes. The waiting began immediately after. While the lab processed my blood work, Martinez explained what they'd discovered about my children's criminal activities. The scope was breathtaking and horrifying. David isn't just laundering money for drug dealers, Martinez said. He's been running an identity theft operation, stealing client information and selling it to organized crime syndicates. And Sarah isn't just stealing medications, she's been falsifying patient records to hide deaths she caused by administering incorrect medications to elderly patients. I stared at him. Sarah's been killing her patients, at least 7 that we've identified so far, all elderly, all alone, all with significant assets that somehow ended up donated to shell charities. David established. My daughter wasn't just a murderer, she was a serial killer who targeted vulnerable elderly patients, stealing from them as they died. How long has this been going on? Based on financial records, about 3 years. They've been perfecting their methods. 3 years. While I was proud of my successful children bragging to friends about David's law practice and Sarah's dedication to nursing, they were murdering innocent people. Mrs. Henderson, said Officer Catherine Webb, Martinez's partner, you need to understand something crucial. Your children aren't just desperate for money anymore. They're cornered. When we arrest them, she continued, they're facing multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial fraud. They're looking at life sentences without the possibility of parole, Martinez added, which means they have absolutely nothing left to lose. People in that situation become extremely dangerous. As if to prove his point, my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Martinez said. We're recording everything now. Hi, David, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Mom, we know where you are. The simple statement sent ice through my veins. How did you really think we wouldn't check Aunt Ruth's house? We're in the neighborhood right now. Actually, we're parked across the street, watching all the police cars at her place. I looked out Ruth's front window and saw the black BMW parked under a streetlight 2 houses down. David, I whispered, why are you doing this? Because you forced our hand, Mom. We tried to do this the easy way, the kind way. You would have just gone to sleep and never woken up. No pain, no fear, no awareness of what was happening. Then his voice hardened, edged with desperation. But now it has to be messy. The police know everything. Actually, David continued, his tone shifting into that lawyer voice he used when he thought he was being clever. They know some things, but not everything. There was a pause. For instance, they don't know about the bomb. Martinez snatched the phone from my hand. This is Detective Martinez, State Police. What bomb? Oh, hello, Detective, David replied smoothly. David Henderson here. I believe you've been investigating my family's private affairs. Even over the phone, I could hear the smug satisfaction in his voice. The bomb is simple but effective. Remote detonator, positioned to take out Ruth's house and everyone in it. Unless my mother comes outside to talk to us in the next 5 minutes, we push a button and solve all our problems at once. Martinez was already signaling the other officers. Ruth was being evacuated. Someone was calling in the bomb squad. Henderson, Martinez said sharply. You're talking about killing a police detective and multiple civilians. That's terrorism. That's survival, David replied. Detective, my mother has evidence that could put Sarah and me in prison for life. You have evidence that could put us in prison for life. Removing all that evidence and all the witnesses seems like good strategy. I grabbed the phone back. David, think about what you're saying. You're talking about murdering your aunt, murdering police officers, murdering me. Mom, he said calmly, we murdered Dad 6 months ago. We've been murdering you slowly for 4 months. We've murdered 7 innocent people in Sarah's hospital. At this point, A few more deaths just expedite our retirement plan. For months, they'd been poisoning me for 4 months, slowly destroying my health, while I trusted them to take care of me in my grief. Why? I whispered. Because you and Dad have everything we need. And you're too old to enjoy it anyway. David replied matter-of-factly, as if explaining a business decision, because we're young and smart and deserve better than waiting around for you to die naturally. Then he added quietly, because we can. The line went dead. Martinez began shouting orders. Nearby houses were being evacuated. The bomb squad was en route. Sharpshooters were taking positions. And I was standing in my sister's living room, finally understanding that the children I'd raised had become monsters capable of anything. Mrs. Henderson, Officer Webb said urgently, we need to get you out of here immediately. But as we moved toward the back door, an explosion rocked the house. Not the massive blast. David had threatened something smaller. Precise. The power went out. Phones went dead. And in the darkness, I heard Sarah's voice coming from somewhere inside the house. Hello, Mother. Surprise. In the chaos that followed, I learned something about myself I'd never known before. When faced with mortal danger, when my own children were hunting me through a darkened house with the intent to murder didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I got angry. Sarah, I called out, my voice surprisingly steady as Martinez and I crouched behind Ruth's overturned dining table. I have to say, this is quite a departure from your usual bedside manner. Mom, Sarah replied calmly, I know you're trying to be brave, but you should know, I've killed 7 people. You'll just be number 8. 7 people. My daughter was actually proud of being a serial killer. 8 if you don't count your father, I replied, because apparently near-death experiences bring out my sarcastic side, though I suppose family murders might rate their own category in your accounting system. Martinez stared at me like I'd lost my mind, but I could see the tactical advantage of keeping Sarah talking while his backup surrounded the house, and after 40 years of motherhood, I knew exactly which buttons to push. Mom, you're not taking this seriously. Oh, I'm taking it very seriously, sweetheart, I said. I'm just impressed by your efficiency. 7 murders, systematic elder abuse, drug trafficking, money laundering, and matricidal while maintaining a full-time nursing schedule. I have to admit, your time management skills have really improved since high school. Footsteps moved through Ruth's kitchen, slow, deliberate, the sound of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Sarah had been in this house dozens of times for family gatherings. She knew the layout as well as I did. Where's Ruth? I whispered to Martinez. Safe, he whispered back. We evacuated her through the basement before the power went out, and David, still in the BMW, we have him surrounded, but he's claiming to have the detonator for a larger device. Is there actually a bomb? Our equipment suggests, yes, Martinez said quietly. Something significant enough to level this house and damage several others. So David wasn't bluffing. My son was prepared to commit mass murder to cover up his crimes, Mom. Sarah's voice was closer, now probably in the hallway, between the living room and the bedrooms. I want you to know that what we gave Dad at the end was merciful. It was quick. But what I have for you is different. Different how, dear? I kept my tone conversational, like we were discussing dinner plans. Slower, more painful. I want you to understand what you've cost us by running away. Martinez was speaking quietly into his radio, coordinating with the teams outside. I caught fragments. Suspect, armed and dangerous. Civilian, in immediate jeopardy. Authorization for lethal force. Lethal force, against my own daughter. Sarah, I called out. I'm curious about something. When did you decide I needed to die? Was it before or after you killed your first patient? There was a pause. Mrs. Patterson was an accident, Sarah said finally. She reminded me of you, actually. Stubborn, interfering, asking too many questions about her medications. Mrs. Patterson. I knew that name. She'd been Ruth's neighbor before moving to the senior center where Sarah worked. So, I said, you've been practicing your murder techniques on helpless elderly people for 3 years, and I'm just your final exam. You're my masterpiece, Mom. Everything I learned from the others, I perfected for you. The casual pride in her voice was more terrifying than any threat. This wasn't my daughter anymore. This was someone who had turned herself into a predator, and I was simply her latest prey. But I was Eleanor Henderson, and I'd raised 2 children who turned out to be sociopaths. If anyone was qualified to deal with entitled, manipulative behavior, it was me. Sarah, honey, I hate to break this to you, but your masterpiece has some serious flaws. What do you mean? Well, for starters, you're trapped in a house surrounded by police officers with high-powered rifles. Your brother is sitting in a car that's probably surrounded by even more police officers, and your entire criminal operation has been exposed by evidence your father left behind. I could hear her moving again, this time toward the living room. Plus, I continued, you've just confessed to multiple murders while being recorded by state police detectives. So even if you somehow kill me and escape, you've basically provided a complete audio confession for your trial. There won't be a trial if there are no witnesses. Sarah, there are a dozen police officers outside this house. Did you think you were going to kill all of them too? For the first time, she sounded uncertain. We have a bomb. David has a bomb. You have a syringe full of whatever poison you've been using to kill people. That's not exactly an equal exchange rate. Martinez held up 3 fingers. Then 2, then 1. The tactical team was moving. Besides, I said, raising my voice to cover the sound of officers entering through the back door, you made one critical error in your planning. What error? You assumed I was the same helpless woman you've been slowly poisoning for 4 months. You assumed I'd just lie down and let you murder me like I let you murder your father. The lights suddenly came back on. Sarah stood 15 feet away, holding a syringe, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. But here's the thing about being slowly poisoned, sweetheart, I said, standing up from behind the table, no longer hiding. It makes you weak and tired and confused. And once you stop being poisoned, I straightened fully. You start getting your strength back. Mom, don't move, or what? You'll inject me with poison. Sarah, there are 6 police officers with guns pointed at you right now. Your criminal career is over. She looked around wildly, finally understanding her situation. Now, I said, put down the syringe and surrender. Or discover what happens when you threaten the life of someone who spent 40 years dealing with your temper tantrums. For a moment, I thought she might actually do it. Put down the weapon. Give up. Accept defeat. Instead, she lunged at me with the syringe and learned that a mother protecting herself can be far more dangerous than her children ever imagined. The gunshot was deafening in Ruth's living room. Sarah collapsed 3 feet from me, the syringe skittering across the hardwood floor. She was still alive, but blood was spreading from her shoulder where the police bullet had struck her. Eleanor, Ruth's voice came from the doorway, where Officer Webb was restraining her from running into what was still technically an active crime scene. I'm okay, I called back, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Watching your own child get shot by police, even when they're trying to murder you, does something to your internal equilibrium that I'm not sure has a name. Sarah was crying, not from pain, but from rage. Even wounded and caught, she was furious that her plan had failed. This isn't over. Sarah gasped as the paramedics worked on her shoulder. David still has the detonator. You're all going to die anyway. Martinez knelt beside her, reading her rights while the medical team stabilized her for transport. Sarah Henderson, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and elder abuse. The list went on for a full 2 minutes. While the medics worked on Sarah, my phone rang. David. Again. Answer it, Martinez said. Let's see how he reacts to his sister being shot. Hi David, I said. Sarah's been arrested. I heard the gunshot, he replied. His voice was eerily calm. I assume she's dead. No, she's wounded. She lived to stand trial. Pity, he said. Well, it doesn't matter. Phase 2 is still operational. Phase 2, the bomb. Mother, I told you we had contingency plans. Through Ruth's front window, I could see the BMW still parked across the street, surrounded by police vehicles. David sat calmly in the driver's seat, holding what looked like a cell phone. David, I said, let me understand this. You're prepared to blow up an entire neighborhood, killing innocent families, just to cover up your crimes. I'm prepared to eliminate witnesses and evidence. The neighborhood casualties are unfortunate, but necessary. Necessary. My son was planning mass murder and calling it necessary. How big is this bomb, David? Big enough to level 6 houses and damage a dozen others. Big enough to ensure that any evidence your father collected, any recordings he made, any witnesses who might testify against us all cease to exist. Martinez was frantically coordinating with the bomb squad, who were trying to approach the BMW without triggering detonation. David, I said, there are children in these houses, innocent families who have nothing to do with this. Collateral damage, Mom. It's unfortunate, but Sarah and I have worked too hard building our operation to let one suspicious old man and his nosy wife destroy everything. One suspicious old man. That was how he spoke about James's own father, as if he'd been an inconvenience instead of the man who raised and loved him. How long have you been planning this? I asked. The murders, the poisoning, everything. 3 years of active planning. But honestly, I've been thinking about it since college. Do you know how frustrating it is to watch your parents sit on a fortune while you're struggling with student loans and entry-level jobs? So you've been planning to murder us since you were 5. I've been planning to inherit what should rightfully be mine. Yes, you and Dad are old. You've had your lives. Sarah and I are young, with decades ahead of us. It makes logical sense for the wealth to transfer to the people who can actually use it. The casual way he discussed murdering his parents was more chilling than Sarah's rage had been. At least Sarah showed emotion. David was talking about double patricide like a business merger. David, I said, your father left you both substantial amounts in his will. You would have inherited everything eventually. Eventually isn't good enough when you owe dangerous people $200,000 and they're threatening to break your legs. So this is all about gambling debts. This is about survival and opportunity. The gambling debts were just the catalyst that moved up our timeline. Martinez gestured urgently for me to keep David talking while tactical teams moved into position. What happens now, David? I asked. Let's say you detonate this bomb and kill dozens of innocent people. Then what? You think you'll just drive away and start a new life somewhere? Actually, yes, Sarah and I have new identities prepared, offshore accounts established, and a very nice little house in Costa Rica that doesn't extradite to the United States. They'd planned their escape as carefully as they'd planned their murders. 3 years of preparation for this moment. You've thought of everything. We're not amateurs, Mom. We're professionals, professional murderers. My children had become professional murderers. David, I said, I want you to know something before you push that button. What's that? Your father was proud of you even when he discovered what you were doing. Even when he was building a case against you, he told Detective Martinez he hoped he was wrong. He hoped you'd prove him wrong and choose to be the good man he tried to raise. For the first time, David's voice wavered. Dad was naive. Dad was heartbroken. He loved you and Sarah more than his own life, and you repaid that love by murdering him. We did what we had to do. No, David, you did what you wanted to do. You chose money over family. You chose greed over love. You chose to become killers instead of decent human beings. There was a pause. Are you finished with the guilt trip, Mom? He said coolly. Because I really do need to detonate this device before the bomb squad figures out how to disarm it. I looked out the window at my son, sitting calmly in his car, prepared to commit mass murder just to protect himself from the consequences of his own choices. Actually, David, I said, I have one more thing to tell you. Make it quick. Your father's recordings and documents you're so worried about, they're not in this house. There was a long pause. What do you mean? I mean James was smarter than you ever gave him credit for. He left copies of everything with Detective Martinez, with his attorney, and with the FBI. Killing me won't destroy the evidence. It will only add mass murder to the charges you're already facing. Another pause, longer this time. You're lying, am I? David, you're a lawyer. Do you really think your father would keep the only copies of evidence this important in one place? Through the window, I saw David's confident posture start to shift. For the first time, he looked uncertain. And there's something else you don't know, I continued. What? Your father didn't just record your conversations about killing us. He recorded your conversations about your other victims, the elderly patients Sarah murdered, the clients you stole from, the drug dealers you laundered money for. Even if you kill every witness in this neighborhood, the FBI already has everything they need to dismantle your entire operation. The silence stretched on for nearly a full minute. Finally, David spoke. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he sounded like the little boy I raised, not the monster he'd become. Mom, I'm scared. And despite everything he'd done, despite everything he planned to do, my heart broke a little for the child he used to be. I know you are, sweetheart, I said softly, but it's time to stop running. What happened next will stay with me for the rest of my life. David Henderson, my eldest son, the little boy who once brought me dandelions and called them bouquets of sunshine, sat in his BMW across from his aunt's house and made a choice that defined who he truly was. He could have surrendered. He could have put down the detonator. stepped out of the car, and accepted responsibility for his crimes. Instead, he chose to take as many innocent people with him as possible. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said into the phone. Then I heard the click of a button being pressed. But nothing happened. No explosion. No destruction. Just David, sitting in his car, pressing the detonator again and again while nothing happened. What? His voice cracked with confusion, then panic. It should have worked. The device was armed. The signal should have. Detective Martinez took the phone from me. "David Henderson, this is Detective Martinez. Your bomb was disarmed 6 hours ago." "That's impossible. Son, did you really think we'd let you sit with a live explosive device this long? Our bomb squad has been working on it since before we even found your sister in the house." Through the window, I saw David's face go pale as the realization hit him. "But how did you know about the bomb?" "Because your father told us." The confusion on David's face was visible even from a distance. "What are you talking about? Dad died months ago. Your father recorded more than just your conversations about killing your parents," Martinez said. "He recorded your contingency plans, your backup methods and, yes, the bomb you planned to use if things went wrong." I took the phone back. "David, your father knew exactly what kind of people you and Sarah had become. He recorded everything." But that would mean his voice trailed off as the truth sank in. That would mean he knew we were going to kill him. Yes. Tears slid down my cheeks. "Your father died knowing his own children were planning to murder him, and he spent his final weeks recording evidence to protect me after you succeeded." Through the window, I watched my son's face collapse as he finally understood the depth of what he'd done. "We killed our father," he whispered. Double quotes. "Yes, David, you did. And we were poisoning you for months." "Yes, Mom." His voice broke completely. "What have we become?" It was the first real human emotion I'd heard from him all day, and it nearly destroyed me. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said, "but it's not who your father and I tried to raise." Outside, the tactical team moved toward the BMW, now confident the bomb threat was neutralized. David didn't resist as they surrounded his car. "Mom," he said quietly, "I want you to know that I remember who I used to be, before the gambling, before the debts, before Sarah and I started, before we became this. I remember being your little boy. I remember too. Do you think Dad would have forgiven us?" I closed my eyes, thinking about James in his last weeks working late into the night, building a case against his own children, knowing they were planning to kill him, yet still hoping somehow he was wrong. "I think your father died hoping you'd choose differently, but we didn't." "No, David, you didn't." The line went quiet except for the sound of my son crying. After a moment, I heard car doors opening and voices giving instructions. They were taking him into custody. "Mom." David's voice came one last time. "Yes, I'm sorry for all of it. For Dad, for what we did to you, for the people Sarah killed. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I know you are, sweetheart. Will you visit me in prison?" I looked around Ruth's living room, overturned furniture, bloodstains on the floor, police officers and crime scene technicians documenting the evidence of my children's attempt to murder me. I saw my sister standing in the doorway, her face pale with shock and disbelief. "I don't know, David, I honestly don't know." The call ended as they arrested him. An hour later, as the last of the police cars drove away and Ruth's house began to feel like a home again, instead of a crime scene, Detective Martinez sat with me in the kitchen while I tried to process everything that had happened. "Mrs. Henderson, there's something else you need to know about your husband's investigation." I was so emotionally exhausted, I wasn't sure I could handle any more revelations. "What now?" "James didn't just gather evidence about David and Sarah's crimes, he gathered evidence about their victims, all of them." Martinez pulled out another thick folder. "Your daughter didn't just kill 7 patients at the senior center, she killed 17. Your son didn't just steal from 3 client accounts, he stole from dozens." The scope kept getting worse. "How many people did my children hurt?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Based on your husband's documentation, Sarah's victims number at least 20. David's financial crimes affected over 40 families." Martinez looked at me with what might have been admiration. "Mrs. Henderson, your husband built cases that will put away not just your children, but an entire network of criminals." "They were working with an entire network?" I asked, horrified. "The drug dealers laundered money through the identity theft ring. Sarah was selling patient information to corrupt officials, who were taking bribes to look the other way." He closed the folder. James Henderson may have started investigating his own children, but he ended up exposing a criminal organization that's been operating in this state for over a decade. Your husband, the quiet accountant who worried about budgets and read mystery novels in his spare time, brought down an entire criminal network. Detective, can I ask you something? Of course, in your professional opinion, what would have happened if James hadn't discovered what David and Sarah were doing? If he hadn't recorded their conversations and gathered all this evidence? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Henderson, based on what we know about their methods and timeline, you would have died 6 months ago, just like your husband. It would have looked like natural causes. David and Sarah would have inherited your estate, paid off their debts, and continued killing vulnerable elderly people for profit. I thought about all the patients in Sarah's care, all the clients who trusted David with their legal and financial affairs. How many more people would they have killed? Conservatively, dozens. Sarah was getting bolder, more confident. David was expanding his operation. Martinez leaned forward. Double quotes. Mrs. Henderson, your husband didn't just save your life. He saved the lives of every person your children would have killed in the future. As I sat in my sister's kitchen that night, trying to understand how my life had gone from normal suburban widow to the target of my own children's murder plot in the span of a week, I realized something important. James hadn't just been protecting me with his investigation, he had been protecting everyone. My husband died a hero. My children would die in prison, and I was going to have to figure out how to live with both of those truths. 6 months later, I stood in a courthouse in downtown Columbus, watching my children receive their sentences. Sarah got life without parole for 23 counts of first-degree murder, plus additional sentences for conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial fraud. She showed no emotion as the judge read the verdict, just the same cold calculation she had displayed that night in Ruth's living room. David received life without parole for conspiracy to commit murder, plus 40 years for financial crimes and racketeering. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he looked directly at me and said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I nodded. It was the best I could do. The trial became a media sensation. The Henderson horror, the newspapers called it, children of greed, the family that killed for money. Every day brought new revelations about the scope of their crimes, new victims coming forward, new evidence showing just how far David and Sarah had fallen from the children I raised. The hardest part wasn't the public attention or the reporters constantly calling for interviews. The hardest part was sitting in that courtroom every day, listening as prosecutors described in cold, clinical detail how my children had methodically planned to murder their father and me. They played James's recordings for the jury. Hours of David and Sarah calmly discussing the best ways to kill us, the timeline for our deaths, and how to make everything look natural. The jury sat in horrified silence as my daughter explained how different poisons affected elderly victims, while my son calculated exactly how much our deaths would be worth to them financially. But there was one recording the prosecution saved for last, one that James had made just 3 days before he died. If anyone is hearing this, James's voice filled the courtroom. It means my children have succeeded in killing me, and Eleanor is in danger. I felt my chest tighten as his words echoed through the room. I want everyone to know that I loved David and Sarah with all my heart. I wanted to be wrong about what they were planning. I hoped, until my last breath, that they would choose love over money, family over greed. His voice cracked slightly. But if you're hearing this, it means they made their choice. Eleanor, if you're listening to this, I need you to know that none of this is your fault. We raised them with love, values, and every advantage we could provide. What they became is not a reflection of our parenting or our love. Some people choose evil. I don't understand why, but they do. The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of James's voice. Eleanor, I know this will be the hardest thing you've ever faced. Losing me, learning the truth about David and Sarah, surviving what they were planning to do to you. But I also know you're stronger than you realize. You're going to survive this. You're going to rebuild. And you're going to find a way to be happy again. By then, I was crying openly. Several members of the jury were as well. Too, David and Sarah, if you're somehow hearing this, James continued, I loved you. I always loved you. I wish I could have saved you from yourselves. I wish I could have found a way to reach the good people I know you used to be. But I couldn't let you hurt your mother. I couldn't let you keep hurting innocent people. I hope someday you understand that everything I did was because I loved you too much to let you destroy more lives. The recording ended with James's final words. Eleanor, live well. Love again. Don't let what our children became destroy the happiness you deserve. When the verdicts were read and the sentences handed down, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief, not satisfaction. Not a sense of justice served. Just relief that it was finally over. As I walked out of the courthouse that last day, Detective Martinez caught up with me. Mrs. Henderson, how are you holding up? I'm surviving, Detective. Some days, that feels like enough. Have you thought about what comes next? I had been thinking about that a lot. The house in Cedar Falls held too many memories, too much pain. Ruth had been urging me to move to Columbus, to start fresh, somewhere new. Actually, I said, I think I'm going to travel. James and I always talked about seeing Europe, Australia, places we kept putting off because we were saving money or waiting for the right time. Martinez smiled. That sounds wonderful. Detective, can I ask you something? Of course. In your experience, do people really change? I mean fundamentally, at their core. He thought about it carefully before answering. I think people reveal who they really are when they're under pressure. Your children revealed themselves to be capable of terrible things. But Mrs. Henderson, you revealed yourself to be capable of incredible courage and strength. He was right. 6 months ago, I had been a grieving widow who let her children make decisions for her, who trusted them completely despite the warning signs I should have seen. Now, I was someone who had survived a murder attempt, testified against my own children, and was planning to see the world. James had been right. I was stronger than I'd realized. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a cafe in Paris, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Henderson. This is Lisa Morgan from the Victim Rights Coalition. We've been following your case and wondered if you'd be interested in speaking to other families who've been victims of elder abuse. I sipped my coffee and watched a young couple share a pastry at the table next to mine. They reminded me of James and me when we were young, full of hopes and dreams, believing that love could conquer anything. Mrs. Morgan, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Of course, she said, but if you change your mind, we think your story could help a lot of people. Families who've been betrayed by their own children, elderly people being financially exploited, anyone who needs to know they can fight back. After I hung up, I thought about James's final message. Live well, love again. Don't let what our children became destroy the happiness you deserve. Maybe speaking to other victims could be part of living well. Maybe helping others recognize the warning signs I'd missed could be my way of honoring James's memory. But not yet. Right now, I was content to sit in a Parisian cafe, planning my next destination, grateful to be alive and free, discovering who Eleanor Henderson could become when I wasn't defined as someone's mother or wife. David and Sarah had taken my husband, my trust, my innocence about what people are capable of doing to those they claim to love, but they hadn't taken my future. And in the end, that made me the winner. I finished my coffee, pulled out the guidebook Ruth had given me, and started planning my trip to Rome. After all, I had a lot of living to catch up on, and as James had promised in his final recording, I was going to live well. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.